So for my Technofied lesson, here at the top where it says Better Lesson, this is the lesson I chose to do. I'm teaching a 7th grade class, biomes. And in this lesson, she basically just used a PowerPoint. She had a video she had the students watch. It's kind of an overview for her warm-up, and she just asked the students questions for a warm-up. And for a final project, she had the students make a brochure. So I decided to Technify this lesson, starting out with the warm-up. I did choose to still just ask the students questions to warm up with like a 5-minute discussion on to kind of evaluate what they already know about bombs. Like if they already know a lot about the tundra, we'll just kind of glaze over that one. And just simple questions. What sorts of things define a biome for these students? Do they know vocabulary words such as climate, weather, adaptation? Do they not? Things like this. And for my Technified part of the warm-up, we're just going to assume that all the students have Chromebooks, and I would have it set up where they could send their answers to these questions to the whiteboard if they so choose. I think this will encourage interaction, because I think sometimes students are afraid to say something because they're afraid to be wrong, and then their peers, make fun of them at some point or whatever. I think this will take away some of that. And then they can just shoot the answers to the board. We can discuss the answers as a class. And then there's that anonymous piece. So moving on to the introduction, I chose to use the site I found for the article that we did in class. It's called Switch Zoo. And I wanted to warm up with a how to build a biome part of this. I think it's really interesting. It's a cool little activity. Where students can build their own biome, and I would put it up on the smart board so that students could interact with the smart board. I could call the students up 2 people at a time. I think this would be good to get them out of their seats and get them moving around at the very start of class, so they're not, they don't zone out and they don't get bored. They've been sitting in their seats all day. So I'd have two students come up and do this first part. We'd talk about a biome as a large region of the world. That's just a vocab definition. I'd give them that specific definition, have them write it down for a test in the future, and take notes during this time. And then the students would pick which one they want to do. Let's just say they said desert. And when this pops up, we can go over vocabulary like longitude and latitude and why deserts might be in these specific locations based on where they're at in the world. We could start to introduce, vocabulary like rain shadow effect and things like that we can test them later in the bulk of the lesson. So then I would have them choose build it, and we'd move on, and maybe I'd have them say mosses, just because I know that's a wrong answer, and we talk about why it's a wrong answer and why they just don't, these type of organisms don't live there, and then select the right answer and talk about why that's correct. And this goes on. You can choose organisms, and then you talk about rainfall, and then we can talk about climate and weather. Just a good introduction to get them to write some vocabulary words down and be able to come up and interact with the board as well. So once we were done with this, we would move on to the body. And for the body, instead of a PowerPoint presentation, I want this to be very student-led and learner-centered. So there's a video here showing how I might do that with Google Earth. So I wanted to show you the Google Earth real quick. So this is what I would be using. I wouldn't set up a formal presentation like you see here on the left. It says Lower Middle School Biomes of the World, Iceland, zoom out. I might just start with, one slideshow that says, the definition of a biome that we've already kind of talked about. And maybe before I show that slide, I ask them to what the definition was, just to kind of reinforce that. And then let's just say they said tundra. And I would ask them, where would a tundra be on the world? And then maybe they said Iceland, let's just say. And then we could go to Iceland and talk about Iceland as a tundra and why it's a tundra, and zoom out here and look at the whole world and say, well, what position on the world do you think facilitates this climate to be a tundra climate? And then we could zoom in and we could talk about animals, like I've got right here. I could make little slides for them that show animals. And this is just a really cool way to allow it to be student-led. Again, I wouldn't already have Iceland set up as the tundra biome I wanted to talk about. I'd completely let it be up to the students where they wanted to say. If they started with Alaska, we could definitely go there. And then I would say, okay, I want you guys to see another one from around the world. Let's also look at Iceland and kind of facilitate that global learning as well. And then a really cool aspect of the tundra I'd want to do is, after we talked about the tundra, I could go, okay, guys, where would a tundra biome be in Montana? And then I could bring them home and show them Trapper Peak. And this is a really cool lesson because we could talk about how altitude can affect a biome climate and make a small biome, a local biome, just because of altitude. And this is considered a tundra biome, even though it's in Montana, because it's at such a high altitude. And I have a picture on here of the Rocky Mountain National Park just to give them another example. And then that's how I would go through the biome lesson, and we could review vocab that we learned from the introduction throughout this lesson, and this facilitates a really student-led, learner-centered environment that I hope to create. And then moving along from the body, come on down to the exit ticket here. And then I'd have them get in small groups so they could stop hearing my voice and they could kind of get together, and I'd give them an activity where I'd give them a longitude and latitude and ask them to find the location in the world and answer some questions, what biome they think it is and why, supporting evidence of the animals and the vegetation. And they would download Google Earth onto their Chromebooks to do this in groups. And I'd give them a sheet of questions that, what is this and why, and let them kind of do their own looking and searching. And then for their homework, I would assign them to do a project where they would make a movie, a commercial of their favorite biome, and they would have stipulations outlined that I have here in this paragraph, such as they'd have to name a certain amount of organisms, plants and animals, their adaptations, why they can survive there, what activities can you do in this biome, and what weather would guests of this biome have to adapt to, and where these biomes would be in the world. And then I just made a simple rubric to grade their commercials on. And then after the due date, we would have them present their commercials in class. Just, play their commercials in class so everyone could see. And then this is just a paragraph about the Learn Center ideology and why I think I met that, and where that ideology comes from. So that's my Technofied lesson. Thanks for listening.